Good morning to our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Casey Hunt. It's Thursday, January 11th, 5 a.m. here in Washington. It's 4 a.m. in Iowa, where there are now 4 days until the caucuses. Just hours ago, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley went head-to-head on the CNN debate stage in the fight for number 2, both deploying the pants-on-fire strategy.
I've said it again, Ron, so stop lying.
And then she said she never said it. Of course, you're lying.
It doesn't change the fact that Ron's lying because Ron's losing.
I thought he lied a lot. Man, Nikki Haley gives him a run for his money.
You get the point. They both also took some time to go after the no-show, faraway Republican frontrunner, Donald Trump.
I think what happened on January 6th was a terrible day, and I think President Trump will have to answer for it.
He sat in the White House and tweeted law and order, but he did nothing to ensure law and order. As your president, I will never let our cities burn.
So at that very moment, Trump was on Fox, where he was lobbed some pretty easy questions, and he himself lobbed a few of the typical shots at his opponents.
You like Ron DeSantis, but he wouldn't even be around today. He'd be working in a pizza shop or perhaps a law firm if I didn't endorse him.
Okay. Trump also called Haley unqualified and dropped this teaser.
Who would be in the running for vice president?
Well, I can't tell you that, really. I mean, I know who it's going to be.
Give us a hint.
I'll give you, we'll do another show sometime.
So Trump is going to voluntarily appear in a New York courtroom today. Again, voluntarily, keyword. We're going to have more on that a little bit later in the show. But the sound heard round the world this morning is some sound that no one was ever intended to hear. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. He was caught on a hot mic last night, right before he started the speech where he dropped out of the presidential race. Listen.
She's going to get smoked, and you and I both know it. She's not up to this. DeSantis called me, petrified that I would...
Petrified of what? We don't know, because the mic cut off right there. And to be clear, she, the one who is going to get smoked, according to Christie, is Nikki Haley, who now is in the strongest position behind Donald Trump in the state of New Hampshire. Let's bring in CNN political commentator and Georgia's former Republican Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan. Also, the host of Can We Please Talk, Mike Leon. Good morning to both of you. Thank you so much for being here this morning. The amount of political news we have is a little over the top for 1 hour of show. I do want to show Geoff Duncan. We played a little bit of Christie's hot mic moment. I also want to play a little bit of the speech that he did give before he dropped out of the race late yesterday at night. Listen to that.
I did call him just because I felt he was being treated poorly with all these people saying, like, you know, you should go. I said, you have every right to do this.
And I feel no differently today, because this is a fight for the soul of our party and the soul of our country. Why have we resisted the calls to drop out of this race? Because unlike some of the other candidates, we're fighting for something bigger than ourselves.
I mean, Geoff, that sounded a lot to me like President Biden, quite frankly. That's the way he talks. And, you know, I just want to kind of take a moment on what Christie did here. He doesn't seem to think any of his rivals could win. He doesn't seem like he's going to be endorsing any of them, but he is leaving the race as the one person who took a very hard line against Donald Trump. What's your view of this?
Well, every card-carrying Republican, whether they're going to vote for Chris Christie or not, I think hopefully view him as a great American, somebody who took on the challenge of taking on Donald Trump, and it was important work to be done. And quite honestly, I think others should have taken the same approach that he took, right, as pushing forward and calling balls and strikes in an honest and fair way. Instead, we see ourselves trying to split hairs and walk around the edges of Donald Trump, the other candidates. And we see what we get. We get a distant second place. And so it was sad to see Chris leave. I do think he made the right choice. If we're going to have any chance at all to beat Donald Trump, it's going to be for us to try to consolidate as quickly as possible.
Mike, in terms of consolidation in the rest of the field, I mean, the overarching theme of that debate last night between Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis was them just completely unleashed in their attacks against each other. I mean, I think it may be easy to lose sight of, the word liar has been used so much in our politics in the last, frankly, since the Trump presidency. It didn't used to be something that people threw around terribly cavalierly, but both Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley used that about each other basically throughout the night. What were your top takeaways from the back and forth on stage? And do you think that they did any favors to themselves in actually trying to take on the guy who is leading the race?
Well, let me say DeSantisLies.com without plugging it a little bit more, right? As somebody who's built websites and product and technology, including the one that people are watching this on this platform, it's pretty good that they had that up and ready for her. And you're right, Casey, like the back and forth of, I thought in a two-person setting with Jake and Dana moderating, it would be a lot easier and you would get more policy vision as opposed to talking over each other and her, like I said, promoting that website. We're not going to give it any more attention than it deserves. But my overall takeaways, I watch it different. You know, I was on in August talking about Nikki Haley in the first debate with 8 people and how she used the H word and humanized when Martha from Fox asked her about abortion and women's reproductive rights and how Republicans have been getting hammered in different state ballot initiatives. And she answered it great. And I was with a Republican and Democratic strategist at the time filming our show, and both of them were both females, and we're like, that's the way you answer it. To now, what I see today, or last night, excuse me, which was really a lot of attacks. The way, Jake asked her the question at the end, what do you like about Ron DeSantis? I like that he's governor of Florida. I mean, you can tell that she's taken this very personally, and I think both of them, back to Jeff's point, I think both of them are missing the key things that they should be talking about with the former president. I get why they're not doing it, right? They're trying to appeal to folks that are trying to caucus for Donald Trump right now to maybe sway for her or him, but there was a lot of personal attacks lobbied last night, and it just didn't feel like we lost some of the policy vision and strategy from both of them with the personal attacks.
I mean, honestly, it probably serves just to drive up both of their negatives, and Haley in particular. And speaking of the former president and how they approached him, Jeff, you once said on CNN, you said that Donald Trump has, quote, the moral compass of an axe murderer, end quote. And my colleagues Dana Bash and Jake Tapper asked Haley and DeSantis about Trump's character specifically. I want to show you how they both answered that question.
Do you believe Donald Trump has the character to be president again?
Well, I'm running because I'm the guy that's going to be able to engineer a comeback for this country. I appreciated what President Trump did, but let's just be honest. He said he was going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. He did not deliver that. He said he was going to drain the swamp. He did not deliver that. He said he was going to hold Hillary accountable, and he let her off the hook.
Do you believe Donald Trump has the character to be president again?
Well, I think the next president needs to have moral clarity. When you look at Donald Trump, I have said, I think he was the right president at the right time. I agree with a lot of his policies, but his way is not my way. I don't have vengeance. I don't have vendettas. I don't take things personally.
Jeff, why do you think they have steered clear of taking on his issues of character more directly? I mean, I will say, Haley, it's the first time I've really heard her say, I don't have vengeance, I don't have vendettas. That is kind of going to this question of how Trump would be in his next term, the revenge question. But still, it's certainly not as far as they could go on this.
So that was the easiest question asked all night, right? It should have just been very clear-cut. No, he does not have the character to be the president. He has 91 indictments sitting over his head right now. He will definitely be convicted of one of those at some point in the relatively near future. And then this whole litany of other issues that have followed him his entire life and certainly through his presidency. And oh, by the way, he lied about the 2020 election. So that's a very, very simple answer. But, I think this is a huge missed opportunity. And I think when we do a postmortem, if Donald Trump becomes a nominee, and us, which is really a 60% swath of the Republican Party, pulls back and does a postmortem analysis, we're going to say, gosh, we should have come right out of the gates and developed a serious narrative that Donald Trump is wrong, and he is bad for this country, and he is evil-minded, and he is self-centered, and he's a horrible candidate. And what really started off as folks trying to gain short-term sugar highs and latching themselves onto Donald Trump, now 3 years removed feels like a boat anchor. I think we are going to have more regret than we've ever had as a Republican Party post-mortem with Donald Trump, whether that's he gets beat by Joe Biden again, or whether or not he shows up in the White House day one and decides to go on a 4-year vengeance tour.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit with you guys later on the show about what Trump had to say last night as well, because he was counter-programming in a town hall. Thanks to both of you. Do stand by. We're going to pick this conversation up. Good morning. Thanks for being up early with us. I'm Casey Hunt. It is 5:30 here on the East Coast. And we have just witnessed what might be the most consequential 24 hours in the race for president this year. Okay, probably definitely this year, where it's only January and we have a long year ahead. But we had a candidate drop out, Chris Christie, doing what he swore up and down that he wouldn't do. He got out of the race before New Hampshire. So there goes the most outspoken critic of Donald Trump in the Republican primary.
Donald Trump wants you to be angry every day because he's angry. He wants you to be angry so that you'll relate to his anger and then to vote for him.
So that was Christie in front of the cameras yesterday. But off camera, while still on mic, he had this to say about rivals Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis.
I've said it again, Ron, so stop lying.
And then she said she never said it. Of course, you're lying.
It doesn't change the fact that Ron's lying because Ron's losing.
I thought he lied a lot. Man, Nikki Haley gives him a run for his money.
All right, let's try that again. We're going to see if we can bring up the hot mic moment that Chris Christie had before the event that he held in New Hampshire, where he announced he was dropping out of the race. And of course, I do think it's worth pointing out that when Christie gave this speech, it became pretty clear pretty quickly that he was not going to endorse one of his rivals at this, although let's just say in public he was kinder than he was in private. Here's what he said in private.
I did call him just because I felt he was being treated poorly with all these people saying, like, you know, you should go. I said, you have every right to do this. And I think a lot of it is, and he and I have both kind of needled Nikki Haley on it. Chris is against Trump, right? Nikki is becoming a darling of the people who are more than ever Trump. And yet she won't answer the question about whether she would accept the VP nod. And she gives all these the mealy-mouthed response. What's wrong with just saying, no, I would not under any circumstances say that?
All right, we're going to try this again. I'm going to bring in our panel here. Geoff Duncan and Mike Leon are back with us here to talk about the debate, Chris Christie, all of it. You heard Ron DeSantis talking there a little bit, Geoff Duncan, in the coverage afterward. What was your take on kind of what he was saying, the argument he was making there?
I heard him say the term mealy mouth a couple of times last night, and he said it again in that clip. That I don't know why that just catches me off guard. But no, look, there's this huge conundrum. I watched Chris Christie's speech last night and his concession, and certainly I was a fan of his approach of trying to take Donald Trump head on. And I just keep thinking, if the other candidates took on that same set of talking points, in addition to a forward-looking message for America, in addition to trying to take on Joe Biden. I mean, to my account last night, it took 44 minutes for either Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley to even mention Joe Biden's name. And so I think you got to beat Donald Trump, you got to beat Joe Biden if you're going to be the next president of the United States. And last night's debate, to me, felt more of like a high school debate. You know, like I brought longer lunches and you had more detentions. It just
Candy
felt
in the vending machine.
It felt small ball to me. It didn't feel like somebody taking on maybe the greatest thug in U.S. history, Donald Trump.
It's honestly, it's interesting that you put it that way because, I was on the road all through 2016, and I think this was something that defined that race, and it's something that we've seen persist through this race as well, which is that there hasn't been anyone that has seemed to be big enough to take on the personality that has been Donald Trump. Obviously, it was a much different campaign in 2016 than in 2020, and certainly in the wake of January 6th, 2021. Geoff Duncan, your word for him was a thug. I want to ask you, Mike, about something we heard from Donald Trump. He had a counter-programming town hall last night on Fox News, and he talked about, he was pressed on that question around his dictator on day one, which came from another Fox event. Here's how Trump seems to try to clarify that this time.
So can you say tonight that political violence is never acceptable?
Well, of course that's right. And of course, I'm the one that had very little of it. The new narrative they have, as you know, is I'm going to be a dictator. No, no. I am not going to be a dictator. I'm going to manage like we did.
What do you make of him saying that? I mean, he tried to kind of pass it off as a joke. Certainly his defenders said that it was a joke the first time he said that. It's kind of interesting to me. He felt like he needed to kind of say it in a more clear way there. What's your view?
Casey, and to the viewers, apologies from my former employer and some of the softball questions that were lobbed yesterday. And there's really never any pushback when he does that. You're alluding to a town hall he had a while back with Hannity where he makes the dictator for one day statement. Brett gives no follow-up there. And when the clip was extended, I watched the town hall yesterday kind of in parallel with the debate. And he just really didn't press him on any of this, specifically the arguments that Trump's lawyers were making in court about presidential immunity and how it would work with the assassination attempt on your political rival. So those are the arguments that his team's making in court. And meanwhile, on television, he's not answering any of the questions because there aren't really any follow-up questions. One thing I wanted to bring out here, something I've been thinking about. And I don't understand why more journalists and correspondents are not asking him this whenever he's been confronted by what he calls mainstream media. If everything's rigged, if the election's stolen, it's all rigged, then why are we here? Why are we here? Why are you participating in something that's rigged? I play golf with a friend of mine who cheats in golf. I don't play golf with him. We know we don't play for money with him because he cheats in it. I don't participate in the process. Why is he participating in this process if it's all rigged and stolen? Because he knows it's not. He knows it's not rigged and stolen. That's why we're here discussing a debate. That's why Ron and Nikki Haley are spending millions of dollars in Iowa. That's why. So we need to press him on these things. And he's just not being pressed when he goes over to my former employer for that.
Well, I mean, in fairness to people who are working very hard to cover Donald Trump, he is not freely engaging with, on platforms where he is concerned that he may be challenged that way, at least hasn't been in recent months. Geoff, let me go back to Chris Christie for a second. He told me he was never going to get out before the New Hampshire primary. He said that to me a couple of months ago when I interviewed him. Clearly, he has evolved in his thinking. And I want to show, we didn't show the part of Christie's speech last night yet that kind of stood out to me the most. He was talking about his own personal ambition and how that plays into this, because that honestly was my biggest question, considering consolidation of the field gives Nikki Haley the best chance to take on the man that he says is too dangerous to be president again. Take a look at what Christie had to say last night.
I'm going to make sure that in no way do I enable Donald Trump to ever be president of the United States again. And that's more important than my own personal ambition. I would rather lose by telling the truth than lie in order to win.
So, Geoff, I mean, I will say I have Republican sources who feel like there was a lot of Christie ego on display last night, that it wasn't good for the Republican Party. But I have to say, at the end of the day, the decision speaks for itself in a lot of ways. What do you make of what he had to say there?
Well, I give Chris Christie a ton of credit from A to Z, from how he ran his campaign to stepping out when he did. Every pitcher starts the game wanting to pitch a complete game, but rarely does that happen. And Chris stepped away for the good of the party, for the good of the country. And I hope he stays plugged in. I hope he stays continuing to hold Donald Trump's feet to the fire. Because you said this earlier, Republicans have fallen in love with Donald Trump's personality, not his leadership. None of us, even his most ardent supporters, wouldn't trust him to do anything. You wouldn't trust him to teach your kids. You wouldn't trust him to run your business. You wouldn't even trust him to cut your grass. But yet we're trying to trust him to run the country again. And in my eyes, he probably runs it into the ground. So I hope Chris Christie's message stays strong and loud and proud. But look, we've got to make a determination, and we've got to do it quick. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis have a very, very thin window to do something here. And I think they've got to throw the thrust levers forward and call Donald Trump exactly what he is. Donald Trump wakes up in the morning and looks in the mirror, and he sees a mafia boss. That he just is this really wide-shouldered, proud mafia boss in his own eyes. But the reality is he's just a small-brained thug. He just walks around and tries to intimidate everybody, from the doorman all the way up through somebody trying to run against him for president.
All right. Geoff Duncan, just, to remind everyone, you experienced this as, again, a Republican lieutenant governor of Georgia. just to kind of underscore where you are coming from in terms of the weight of your words around Donald Trump. Geoff Duncan, Mike Leon, thank you guys both very much for being here.